It is time for us to make local police departments reflect the diversity of the communities they serve. It is time to end corporate ownership of prisons and detention centers. It is time for us to have a law enforcement culture which says that lethal force, the shooting of somebody, is the last response, not the first response. It is time for us to take a hard look at the so-called war on drugs. Millions of Americans over the last 30 years have received police records because of possession of marijuana. And if you are a 19-year-old kid going out looking for a job, having a police record does not help. That is why I believe that at a time when the Federal Controlled Substance Act lists marijuana as a Schedule I drug, it is time to take marijuana out of the Federal Controlled Substance Act. But when we talk about drugs, there is another issue that we have got to put front and center on the table. And that is, we have an epidemic in this country of opiate and heroin addiction. Every day, people are dying of overdoses of heroin or opiates. But to address this crisis, we have got to be smart. And being smart means that when we deal with substance abuse or addiction, we understand that we cannot treat those issues as criminal issues, but as health issues. And that means that we need a revolution in mental health treatment in this country. People in America should be able to get the mental health treatment they need when they need it, not 6 months from now. And by the way, this is not just drug abuse or addiction. There are thousands of people walking the streets of this country who are suicidal and or homicidal. I want those people to be treated and their problems to be treated like any other health-related issue. I don't want them to have to fill out 50 forms and maybe get treated 8 months from now. If you're facing a mental health crisis in America, you should get the treatment you need today, not 8 months from now. This campaign is listening to ordinary Americans and not just wealthy campaign contributors. And what I am extraordinarily proud of is that this campaign has received more individual campaign contributions than any campaign in American history up to this point. We have received 8 million individual campaign contributions. Anyone know the average contribution? $27. Now, you know what that means? What that means is, despite all the rhetoric out there, we have shown the world that you can run a winning national campaign without being dependent on Wall Street, drug companies, or big money interests. This campaign has been listening to working people. And what working people are telling me is that they cannot make it on a starvation minimum wage of $7.25 an hour, that we have got to raise the federal minimum wage to a living wage, $15 an hour. And when we talk about equitable wages, we have also got to understand that it is not acceptable that women today are making 79 cents on the dollar compared to men. That has nothing to do with economics. It is just old-fashioned sexism, and together we're going to end that. And I know that every man here is going to stand with the women in the fight for pay equity. Now, once a month, federal government comes out with a report on official unemployment, usually around 5% lately. Anyone here believe that real unemployment nationally is 5%? You're right, it's not. There is another federal report, which doesn't get quite so much publicity, which adds not only those who are unemployed, but those who have given up looking for work, and those that are working part-time when they want to work full-time. That number means that almost 10% of our people are unemployed. And obviously, in certain areas of the country, the number is much higher than that. That is why we need a massive federal jobs program to put Americans back to work. We should be hiring teachers, not firing teachers. We should be creating the best child care system in the world, not maintain a dysfunctional system. Once upon a time, the United States had the best infrastructure in the world. Roads and bridges and water systems and wastewater plants and airports and rail. We had the best rail system in the world. No longer the case. We can create up to 13 million good-paying jobs, rebuilding our infrastructure, which is exactly what I intend to do. When we talk about why the middle class has been disappearing for 30 years, one of the reasons is a disastrous trade policy which has allowed corporate America to shut down in this country and move to low-wage countries abroad. We have a message for corporate America, and that is, if you want us to buy your products, start manufacturing them here in the United States. This campaign is listening to young people. And young people are catching on. They are the future of America, and they are damn determined to shape the future of America. What this campaign is about is thinking outside of the box, beyond the status quo. Think about this for a second. Everybody here knows, no debate, we are living in a highly competitive global economy. Everybody knows that to succeed today and in the future, we need the best educated workforce in the world. No one denies that. Our job, therefore, is to encourage people, not just young people, but in a technologically changing society, all people, to get the best education that they can. Now, 40 years ago, you had a high school degree, you were doing okay. High school degree would enable you to go out and probably get a middle-class job. That was 40 years ago, not today. Today, when we talk about public education, it is no longer good enough to talk about first grade through 12th grade. We have got to talk about public education, meaning free tuition at public colleges and universities. Does anybody here think that that is a radical idea? It is an absolutely commonsensical idea. It will happen sooner or later. Our job is to make it sooner. I want every child here in Washington, D.C. and in Vermont, regardless of their income, to understand that if they study hard, if they do well in school, yes, they will be able to get a college education. And that is what America is supposed to be about. Then anybody can make it into the middle class, regardless of the income of your families. Anybody here have student debt they're struggling with? All right? Now again, think about this. If our job is to encourage people to get the best education that they can, why are we punishing millions of people for getting a college education? What I believe we have got to do is to make it possible for everybody who has a student debt to refinance their loans at the lowest interest rates they can find. Now, my opponents and the establishment media, well, they say, well, you know, Bernie, you're Santa Claus. You're giving away all of these things. You're giving away free tuition at colleges. You're going to lower student debt. How are you going to pay for it? And here is the point that we have got to address. In the last 25 years, there has been a massive transfer of wealth from the middle class to the top 0.1%. Our job is to transfer that money back into the hands of the middle class. Eight years ago, as all of you know, against my vote, Congress bailed out Wall Street. Wall Street's greed, its recklessness, and its illegal behavior nearly destroyed the economy. Millions of people lost their jobs, their homes, their life savings. Congress bailed them out. Well, I think if Congress can bail out Wall Street, it is Wall Street's time to help the middle class of this country. And that is why I believe we must impose a tax on Wall Street speculation. And that would more than cover free tuition at public colleges and universities and lowering student debt. Now, Wall Street doesn't like this idea. But I say, you know what, Wall Street, you're going to have to learn you no longer are going to get it all. This campaign is listening to the African American community.